Hello and welcome back to another episode of Amplify. In today's episode, we are diving into something that has sparked a lot of engagement online. And honestly, I am not surprised by that one bit because this topic that we're going to talk about touches on something really deep in the psyche and the heart of both men and women. So we are going to talk about emotional storms, masculine containment, masculine fortitude, if you will, feminine chaos, and the illusion of safety in relationships. We're going to be talking about polarity and like real polarity, the kind that cracks you open and brings you to your knees in the best way. So there's a post that I shared recently on Instagram that has, like I said, gotten a lot of engagement, a lot of comments, a lot of shares, a lot of downloads. It was kind of a longer post, a bit more blog style. You may have seen it. And in this post, I talked about something that I believe is really one of the greatest gifts that a man can give a woman. And that is to stand steady in the face of her emotional storms. So to really be that anchored rock amidst her feminine chaos, right? Amidst her fire, her softness, her waves, all of that. Because women, we are the waves. We are the ocean. We are ever changing. We are emotionally fluid. We are intuitive, cyclical, unpredictable. We are the weather, the moon, the tide, the dance, all of that. And men, when they're anchored in their mature, healthy masculine energy, they are the rock. They are the container. They are the frame. They are the foundation. They don't flinch at the face of the storm. They welcome it. The storms do not scare them. And so we're going to dive into that a lot more. And we're going to look at it from various angles. So let's talk a little bit about the nature of the feminine. And we're just going to be real here. Okay. Women, we are by our very nature emotionally unstable. And I know that that phrase and me saying that might trigger some people, right? Women might be like, excuse me, what are you talking about? Men might be like, yeah, exactly. You guys are crazy. Like whatever, right? But I mean it with love and reverence. We move through hormonal shifts, energetic phases, and intuitive flows every single month and every single day, right? And so when we think about men and women and our differences, like I love men, I love women, I love how different we are. It's by design, right? And so women, we operate on a monthly, 28, 30, 31, 32 day cycle. We're very synced up with the moon oftentimes, whereas men operate on very much a 24-hour cycle. So each day is pretty consistent and predictable when it comes to a man, right? Whereas for women, each day is not, right? We may have chunks of each month that are similar to the months before or the months coming up, but we by nature are pretty emotionally unpredictable and unstable, if you will. And so I'm just going to give us a quick refresher on what goes on in a woman's body each month. So we're going to talk about, women's cycles. Men, if you're listening to this too, like this is really important because if there are women in your lives, and there probably are, whether it's just family, your mother, friends, coworkers, your partner, your girlfriend, your wife, whoever it is, right? Like this is helpful information to know. Okay. It's like a cheat code. And ladies, this is super helpful information for you to know about yourself because when you are synced up to your cycle and when you understand how your body is designed to be and to flow and to shift throughout the month, throughout the days, when you understand this in a much deeper way and you're connected to this, it makes your life so much easier because you're then not wondering like, oh, why am I feeling so tired? Why am I feeling so moody? Why am I feeling so this? Or like, oh my gosh, I'm so productive, right? And it can help you better manage yourself for one, but also better manage your relationships with others, right? And it's also helpful with like planning what sort of activities to do, what sort of workouts, what sort of foods to eat, all of that. So we're just going to do a really quick refresher. So the menstrual phase, days 1 through 5 or so of a woman's cycle, hormonally, estrogen and progesterone are low. And as far as mind, mood, and energy, you may be feeling some fatigue, lower mood, more inward focus, right? The menstrual phase is winter for women. Hibernation, right, is a natural time for rest, reflection, and release, both physically and emotionally. After that, we move into the follicular phase, which is days 6 through 14. So this is springtime, right? Hormonally, estrogen rises as the body prepares for ovulation. Mind, mood, and energy increases, motivation returns, brain function sharpens, and creativity and confidence often surge. So follicular phase is a really great time for planning, socializing, and taking action. So follicular energy is like great, like organize, get shit done, like all of that. It's really a lovely time. And then around day 14, we step into ovulation phase. And so ovulation phase, this would be our summer, and hormonally, estrogen peaks, luteinizing hormone LH surges, and ovulation is triggered. Now, ovulation, literally, a woman's body is what a woman's body is saying hormonally and in all the other ways. A woman's body is literally saying, like, make me pregnant, right? Like, let's have a baby. It's time to have a baby. So other things too that happen. So actually, like, we'll do mood, mind, and energy. So this is ovulation time, which unfortunately ovulation is literally like less than a week that you're in ovulation energy, right? Because it's like you ovulate and then it's over, right? So it's a short window, which I sometimes get really bummed by because you feel so good during ovulation. Like, I feel so good, but sometimes too good, if you know what I mean. Sometimes I'm like, I can't work. I just got to be out and like, you know, you just want to be like looking fantastic and vibing and all of that. So sometimes, like, feel like I describe ovulation time as like I'm in sexy werewolf energy, because like sometimes it's just like I am a ravenous monster, but like gorgeous and so magnetic, right? Ovulation is high vibe, magnetic, like oozing feminine energy phase. And women, we often feel the most vibrant, confident, and sexually charged during ovulation, which all makes sense, right? Verbal fluency and charisma tend to peak. We also, like, physiologically during ovulation, like, we get prettier. It's crazy. Like, your skin is going to be glowing more, like all of these things. Like, if you take pictures of yourself throughout the month, you will notice that you are like visually also more attractive during ovulation, which is crazy. And so people notice that. So like ovulation, fantastic for like networking, giving presentations, like all of that kind of stuff, like being out and about and in the world. Anyway, after ovulation, we step into the luteal phase, which is days 15 to 28. It's like 10 to 14 days long. And luteal is kind of my least favorite. I'm in it right now. So hormonally, so luteal is, I think I said ovulation is summer, luteal is fall, right? Preparing for winter. Okay. So hormonally, progesterone rises after ovulation, estrogen dips, and then rises again a little bit. And mind, mood, and energetically, early luteal phase can feel productive and stable. But as your progesterone dominates, and then both hormones drop towards the end as you approach menstruation again, moodiness, anxiety, irritability, and fatigue, those might show up, right? PMS, premenstrual syndrome, right? Syndrome or symptoms? PMS. I forget what the S in PMS stands for. That's so funny. So luteal, when people are like, oh, she's on her period, right? Like, when you're on your period, you're really like, yeah, you're tender and you want to be inward and kind of quiet and gentle, and you might experience cramps, that sort of thing. I pretty much never experience cramps or anything like that, because I've done so much work to really, like, I mean, just like work with my hormones and get balance and all of that. But luteal, that's the phase, gentlemen. That's the phase you need to watch out for. It's not once the period's here. It's right before. Anyway, so luteal phase, this is a time when sensitivity is heightened, when boundaries become clearer, because you're like, I do not have the energy for this. I do not have the care for this. Like, it's either a hell yes or a get the heck out of here, right? And so luteal is great for turning inward and wrapping things up. So luteal is like, you're wanting to nest, you're wanting to cross things off the list. Like, it's preparing for hibernation, right? Preparing for winter, preparing for that release. So that's just our little refresher on how emotionally unstable, right, women can be and how we just are naturally designed that way. And the world is set up to be on a 24-hour cycle. We are not, women, we are not designed to be on a 24-hour cycle, right? So us being emotionally unstable or unpredictable in this way doesn't make us wrong, right? It makes us feminine. And so when I say women are naturally emotionally unstable, and I say that in like a neutral, science-based way, not in a pejorative women are crazy kind of way, right? Like that's part of being a woman, is having these waves, right? And these cycles and stuff like that. And I believe that all of this makes us powerful. And so what we often crave most is the feeling that we can be all of that with somebody. And I don't just mean all of like our hormonal cycle, but all of our sides. Like we are multifaceted creatures that we ebb and flow, and we like, there's so many archetypes that we can play with and just like facets of our personality and all this kind of stuff. And something that women crave the most is the feeling that we can be everything that we are with somebody, right? The feeling that we don't have to tone it down or make sense all the time, right? That we don't have to perform peace. Like, oh, I have to be peaceful. I have to act peaceful. I have to act calm, normal, whatever it is all the time in order to be lovable. So when a man says to a woman, your storms don't scare me, I can hold all of you, I will not falter. And then when she, right, when we really believe that and we can feel it from him, that's when we start to melt. That's when we as women can really exhale and feel our body start to relax and surrender. When we know and we feel that we are truly safe to surrender and to let go and to be all of what we are unapologetically. And that being said, where a lot of men get it wrong is they want a woman to make sense, especially wanting a woman's emotions to make sense. Men are very logical creatures, and that doesn't mean men aren't also emotional. They are, right? And to varying degrees, we all have our own levels of emotionality and logic and all of that. We all have both of those sides. We all have masculine and feminine energy, but men tend to want a lot of men tend to want women's emotions to make sense. They want logic, they want a straight line, they want a solution, but a woman's emotional expression isn't a problem to be solved. It's something to be felt. Now, one of the beautiful gifts of the masculine is when a woman is having a big emotional experience or feeling emotional or whatever is going on, for the man in her life to be like, one, to witness it, right? I see you, like all of that, like what do you need from me? And then to see if problem solving would be supportive, right? That's one of the things like I know for me that I absolutely love is like, can you help me solve this problem? Right? But sometimes, and a lot of the time, and this is a hack for the men, right? A little insider secret. A lot of the times when we women are experiencing big emotions, good or bad, right? We want to just be witnessed and held in that. And we want to feel safe to be the bigness of whatever it is. If it's happiness, if it's sadness, if it's just feeling moved to tears, if it's anger, we want to be able to be all of that and to just be seen in it and held in it, not necessarily to have the problem solved. So a great little trick for the men is to ask, like, do you want me to help solve this problem and take action? Or do you want me to just listen, right? Or just be here for you or hug you or whatever it is. So sometimes, right, a mistake that men will make is jumping to trying to solve the problem immediately or trying to make it make logical sense. And so when a man like insists that a woman explain, justify, or contain herself in a way that fits his linear and logical experience, he often will miss the very essence of what makes a woman magical, right? And powerful. And so, a little spoiler alert, a woman's emotions are not always going to make sense, and they're not supposed to. I recently went through this, experienced this, and it was very like I learned a lot. The other person learned a lot. And it was something where I was like, hey, like in the moment, I'm like, I can trace back to like why I had those big emotions and all that kind of stuff. I can explain it to you clearly, but where it makes a lot of sense for me and why that happened, but it may not make sense for you in the way that you think it should, right? And you're just going to have to be okay with that, you know? And now I want to shift to something else where men may start to back away, right? Or men may be intimidated by or feel some level of a lack of safety with a woman who has big emotions or with an emotional woman. And this is when men choose what I would call the illusion of safety. So the illusion of safety is when men want quote unquote peace, right? Or they don't know how to handle a woman's emotions, and feminine women are tapped into their emotions. A woman who is really connected to her femininity is going to have emotional experiences, right? It's not just softness and it's not just like appeasement or submission, right? A feminine woman is going to have powerful emotions, right? She's going to challenge a masculine man. And I don't mean challenge in the sense of being argumentative, right? Or bickering with him or nagging, right? But that bigness of her emotions is going to challenge the steadfastness of his like anchored energy, right? And his own foundation. And so sometimes men get a little intimidated by this in a woman and will, like I said, choose the illusion of safety. And when they do this, they will often choose a more emotionally predictable woman. And typically, these are one of two women. The first woman is one who's passive, maybe insecure, or disconnected from the magnitude of her own feminine energy. This, I would say, is a lot of men will choose women who are significantly younger than them because they're wanting a woman like this. And I'm not saying always, but this kind of woman is often easier to control. She's not going to trigger him as much. She won't test him. She doesn't bring that heat, but she also doesn't bring the depth, right? And oftentimes a woman like this, right, more insecure, passive, disconnected from the bigness of her power, she's often immature. And I don't mean like in a insulting way, but immature, young, young, whether it's not necessarily by age. She's often meek and doesn't have much of her own identity. So she's very moldable, right? And men who are insecure and men who are controlling tend to go for women like this. But then there's a second type of woman that men tend to go for that tend to be more emotionally predictable. And this is the woman who lives in her masculine energy. So she is more logical. She's more practical. She's more self-contained. This woman is disconnected from her emotions. She's disconnected from her fire, from her passion. And a woman who is in her own masculine energy, again, is going to be more logical and controlled and less emotional and more in her head than in her body. But this woman is also going to be more predictable, right? And she may check all of the boxes on paper, right? It's all tidy, it's all efficient, checks all the right boxes, looks good on the outside. She might even appear very feminine, right? Because being in your masculine energy and appearing feminine, those aren't necessarily the same thing. So you can be in your masculine energy and still appear very feminine, but your energy is what I'm talking about here, right? How you think, how you act, how you carry yourself, the vibe that you put out is going to be noticeably different, right? So this woman who is disconnected from her feminine energy and who is more in her masculine energy, she feels safe to a man because there aren't many highs and lows, right? She's operating at this kind of middle ground, neutral space, right? It's predictable and he doesn't have to get out of his comfort zone. And additionally too, she can seem like the chill, cool girl, right? Because she thinks more in a masculine way. And so, she like thinks so much like, right? Like he's identifying or connecting with her more in a masculine energy kind of way, which is a way that he may be more used to as being a man and connecting with men, right? And again, it's not about a woman who may appear more masculine. That's not what we're talking about at all, but it's the energetic place that she inhabits and where she's coming from. And so a lot of the time though, this relationship goes a couple ways. It's either a man choosing a woman like this because he's very much in his feminine energy, right? And so they just naturally complement each other. And I think in that dynamic, sometimes that's a great dynamic for everybody involved, right? But oftentimes what I see, because these are the kind of women that I work with, this woman I'm describing, these are the kind of women I really specialize in working with. A lot of the time, these women end up very unhappy and very unfulfilled because even though they're occupying all of that masculine energy space, right? And so they're attracting usually a man who's more in his feminine energy, that's not their natural state that they want to be in. Like deep down, they don't want to be in the masculine energy space in a relationship. Some women do, and they're very happy with that. And they're very happy having those kind of that energetic polarity be quote unquote reversed, right? Where they're with a man who's more in his feminine. And that's totally fine. If that's the vibe that works for you and for some people, amazing, right? But in my experience, most women who are in their masculine energy, they don't want to be, even if they don't consciously realize it. And they especially start to notice that when they're in a relationship, right? Because they're like, I'm exhausted. I'm always leading. I'm like all this kind of stuff. Our sex life is not where I want it to be. Like there isn't the fire, the passion, like all of that. And so men who are very in their feminine energy, right? Or who really don't have that strong, anchored, healthy masculine energy in them yet, right? Because you can develop it. They will often choose women like this who are very in their masculine, but then masculine men may also choose women like this because, like I said, she's emotionally predictable more, right? Because she operates emotionally more like a man because she's disconnected from her emotions. But what happens here is this relationship ends up being lukewarm and boring. And so when men choose a woman like this, and I'm going to speak a little bit from the man's perspective, there's a lack of passion, well, women's perspective too, a lack of adventure, a lack of polarity that desperately crave. But speaking for men, like when masculine men choose a woman like this, right? Good on paper, checks all the boxes, all this kind of stuff, emotionally predictable, emotionally steady, like no big highs and lows emotionally, like anything like that. He's missing out on and ignoring the intensity and the passion that he deep down desperately needs, right? Like that warrior energy inside of him wants fire. So things with a woman like this tend to feel pretty boring. Safe, yeah, sure. Predictable, yes, but boring and lacking the heat and that next level passion, intimacy, and connection that a man so deeply, deeply wants and needs. And the woman too, because I'm willing to bet most women in that kind of situation aren't as fulfilled as they want to be either. And so when a man does this, he chooses the illusion of safety, like I said, by choosing that predictability and that steadiness, if you will, and the lack of like ups and downs and the lack of emotionality. When he does this, he chooses the illusion of safety at the expense of what his soul needs. Because usually there's not going to be a big spark. There's not going to be chaos, and I don't mean chaos like in a like really like negative toxic way, right? But there also isn't going to be that primal chemistry. Okay? And so when men choose that, they trade aliveness for predictability. They choose comfort over that wild, sacred risk of true love, passion, intimacy, and connection. And I think ultimately both people lose in that situation, right? And interestingly, like I think we are designed for like soul shaking, like deep, passionate love. And as somebody, myself, as someone who chose safety at the expense, or what I thought was safety, the illusion of safety, and I'll get into it a little bit more, as somebody who chose the illusion of safety at the expense of their soul in my first marriage, at the expense of risk, the gap between good and great is excruciating. And like I said, I did this in my first marriage, so far my only marriage, but I did this in my first marriage. And I'm not faulting myself. I met my ex-husband when I was 23 years old, right? I knew what I knew at the time. And I think at the time I did make a good choice. But I also ignored a lot of things that I didn't realize would be more important to me down the road, right? There were things that my intuition was trying to get my attention about while dating that I didn't think were that important to listen to, that I didn't look at more closely, right? I was very much like, this is the best relationship I've ever had up until now. And that was true. Best relationship I've ever had up until now. He's such a good man. All these other question marks and things that I think I want, I think I need, I'm being selfish and entitled and wanting those things. This is good. This is good. Choose this, right? All the while, right, when I look back, my soul, my intuition, God likely was trying to get my attention and tell me, hey, no, this isn't it, right? And I'm talking before even getting engaged, right? During dating and stuff like that. And again, I'm not faulting younger me for going down that path and choosing my ex-husband as a partner, anything like that. I knew what I knew at the time and did the best that I could with the tools and knowledge that I had and with the maturity that I had at the time. And I know in so many ways that I chose from my wounding, from my trauma, from my lack of self-worth, I know that I chose while also ignoring my intuition and ignoring things that my soul was trying to get my attention about. And so when I say this, right, choosing safety at the expense of what your soul wants, and don't get me wrong, safety is important, but what I'm talking about is the illusion of safety. The illusion of safety. Like I know this from like deep personal experience, and getting to that place where like the space between good and great felt really far apart and it didn't feel like great was going to be possible. That's when I decided to end my marriage. And I know without a doubt, like I know I've never questioned whether that decision was right for me and if it was right for my ex-husband. But I know that now, and I've known every day since then, that I would much rather pursue great and hold out for great than settle for good, right? And so that's a lot of what we're talking about here from both sides, men and women, right? And so women, I'm going to speak to you for a second now. I want to remind you that it is not your job to perform palatability for a man who can't handle your depth. And so what I mean by this is it's not your responsibility to lessen yourself, to water yourself down, to make yourself more digestible for a man who cannot hold all that you are. It's not your job, right? If he is unable to hold the magnitude of your energy, of you, of your power, he's probably not for you. But I want to be really clear that this does not mean we get to bypass personal responsibility, right? This is not like one of those meme moments, right? Of being like, if he can't handle like all of me, then go find less, or whatever like those dumb like memes are and stuff like that. Like if you can't handle me, go find less, blah, 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 right? Because being feminine and being embodied in your feminine energy and being a powerful feminine woman and being connected with your emotions and being emotional doesn't mean being reactive. It doesn't mean being explosive. It doesn't mean being toxic. It doesn't mean emotional immaturity or bypassing healing. It doesn't mean ignoring accountability, right? And just doing whatever the heck you want to do and acting however the heck you want to act just because your feelings said so. No. You still have to do your work. You still have to regulate your nervous system. You still have to communicate to be self-aware and to not weaponize your wounds or weaponize your emotions. Feminine expression is not an excuse for bad behavior, but your truth, your emotion, your intuitive waves, those are sacred. And when it's expressed from a place of embodiment and honesty, that is healing. And I'm going to keep going down this, right? Because the accountability piece is important, because I'm not one of those women who is like, women can do no wrong. You're a goddess, no matter what. Be you always and all the ways, unapologetically, no matter what that actually means or the results that happen as an effect, right? Yes, I'm all for you being unapologetically yourself, right? And I'm all for you being your fullness and being the woman that God created you to be, right? And if you are wanting to be in relationship, whether that's with a man or with friends and all of that, you might realize that being your most like unfiltered, unapologetic, unhinged version of you is not always effective, right? Right? We get to be self-aware. We get to have discipline. We get to be emotionally mature. So this part is really crucial. So listen up. The feminine can be wild and emotional without being reckless or irresponsible. So what I'm saying is not a permission slip to be emotionally erratic, volatile, or manipulative or careless with your words or your actions. This is for the ladies. This isn't about unleashing chaos and expecting a man to just deal with it and just accept me as I am. Because there's a big difference between embodied feminine expression and unregulated emotional dumping. There's a big difference between operating through your feelings and your emotions and operating from them and being at the mercy of your emotions, right? There's a difference between being reactive emotionally and being in tune with your emotions, but still holding your power, right? One is powerful, magnetic, and deeply felt and respected. The other is reactive, unconscious, and often coming from unprocessed wounds and a lack of discipline and a lack of self-awareness and a lack of empathy, right? A lack of understanding how your emotional reactivity might affect somebody else. Okay. So we have to be really honest with ourselves, ladies, because you need to know whether you are expressing your emotions from a grounded, open-hearted place and a place of being in your elevated queen energy, right? As a mature, emotionally intelligent woman, or are you unconsciously projecting old pain, testing your man from insecurity, your insecurity, or creating drama to feel alive, right? To get a dopamine hit from creating some drama, right? Like where are you operating from? Because if your storm is coming from a lack of self-regulation, from a place of immaturity, from a place of avoidance, from a place of control, that's embodied, empowered feminine energy. That's not healthy feminine energy. That's trauma speaking, right? That's potentially manipulation speaking. That's immaturity speaking. And just like we desire our partners, our men, to be steady and accountable and consistent and to be able to hold their frame and their foundation while we get to have big emotional experiences and be the waves and the wild and free feminine, just like we want them to be steady and accountable, we also have to be willing to hold ourselves to that same standard, which doesn't mean not being emotional, right? It doesn't mean you have to be perfect all the time and all of that. It means doing our inner work. It means regulating our nervous system. It means owning our patterns. It means being self-aware and taking accountability. It means understanding yourself and why you operate the way that you do. It means owning your behavior and your actions, right? It means understanding yourself deeply and intimately and knowing how to communicate about your experience as well. And it also means expressing, not to control or to blame, but to connect. And that's what makes you not just a feminine woman, but a powerful, embodied feminine woman. And that is what sets you apart as like in that queen energy, opposed to the like spoiled princess or the bratty or the like girl energy that elevates you. When you're able to operate in that way, that elevates you into that queen frequency. Now, I also want to clarify, you guys, that doesn't mean that you're going to get it right every single time, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to act from your healed state and your elevated state and your embodied state every single time. No, ma'am. You are a human. You're going to mess it up. You're not going to do everything perfectly. For my recovering or current perfectionist, recovering perfectionist here, not recovering, healed perfectionist over here. You're not going to do it perfectly every single time. Get over it. It'll be fine. You'll survive it. I promise. You're going to mess this up sometimes. You're going to be like, ooh, I just was reactive, right? Or, ooh, I should have taken a breath and thought about my response, right? And understood what these feelings are telling me before just running with them. But the goal is to operate from your healed and embodied state more than from your wounding, more than from your patterns. And then to learn, to stay accountable, to be self-aware, and to grow with each repetition, right? You're not going to get it right all the time. I don't get it right all the time at all. But the key is recognizing that our emotions and our feelings, that's data. That's data for us. And sometimes, right, it's aligned and so appropriate to just be moved with your feelings and your emotions and all of that. And I'm meaning often the positive ones, but don't get me wrong. You can be moved by positive emotions in a way that is not necessarily aligned, right? You might be feeling so excited about something and then go do something impulsive as a result, which might not be a good idea, because you're just like, oh my gosh, I was so like excited and happy and feeling so great that I went on this big shopping spree, or I like said yes to this, or I did this, or I blew off the whole rest of the day of my responsibilities because I was just feeling so fun and I wanted to do XYZ, right? And it can also, so there's, we got to keep ourselves in check from the positive and the negative. I think the negative is more where we get to be aware of, because that often has greater consequences for others, yourself too, right? But one of the keys is, like I said, to acknowledge that our emotions and our feelings are data points to take in. And when you're feeling that data, ooh, I'm feeling XYZ, right? You also don't need to make it make sense immediately. You can say, I'm feeling a constriction in my body. I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I feel like I need to cry. And you can just sit with that for a moment and feel it for a moment, right? But taking that beat, that moment to be with it and to maybe get curious about it before just being like, I feel like this, blah, right? Right. And now, for the men listening, ladies, keep listening, but for the men listening, I know that so many men, the main things that they say that they want from a relationship are peace, or is peace, right? But peace doesn't mean quiet. Peace doesn't mean no ups and downs. Peace doesn't mean avoiding discomfort. And I also know that peace doesn't mean boring. You don't want boring. I don't think you want boring, right? Peace is about being so solid in yourself that a woman's chaos doesn't shake you. Peace means that you hold the container without trying to change it. Now, obviously, if you're with a toxic or emotionally immature woman, that's a different thing. That's not what I'm talking about, right? But it also means the peace that you get if you are with a toxic or emotionally immature woman, your peace is deciding, you know what, this is unhealthy and I'm going to see my way out of it so that you can maintain peace. So I'm not saying, men, that you should just deal with and put up with a woman's erratic, immature, or potentially toxic behavior. That is not what I'm saying at all. I know people will mishear that, but real men, anchored, integrated men, masculine men, love women for being women, not in spite of our emotions, but because of them. Real men, masculine, anchored, healthy, integrated men don't need women to make sense all the time. They don't, because they understand, oh, that's a woman. She's a whole different species than me. She's a whole different creature. I'm not necessarily meant to understand her. I'm meant to like witness and experience her. And because, right, like we're not easy to understand. Women are not easy to understand. And I think a lot of men understand that. And I think the sooner the men understand that we are not easy to understand, they'll have a lot more peace, right? Because they won't be trying to figure out, why is this happening? What is this? Right? If they're like, yo, I'm going to accept that I'm not going to understand her all the time. That brings you peace. Of course, for the important things that you do need to understand, you want to understand those. You want to communicate, right? Obviously. But masculine men, healthy, integrated, grounded, anchored masculine men, love women for being women, not because we're easy to understand, but because we awaken something in them that they cannot access on their own. So I'm going to close this on out in a moment for the men and women. Like, women, your waves will come. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, especially if you are on your feminine embodiment journey, right? Especially if you're wanting to connect with, deepen your feminine essence and your femininity, the waves will come. And the question is, for the men, will you erode under her force, right? Will the waves of her emotional storms just blow you away or wear you away over time? Will you try and silence the storm, contain it, shut it down, like all that kind of stuff? Or will you be the rock, right? Will you be unmoved, unshakable, and steady? Will you meet her power with your steadfast presence, right? It's that wild feminine chaos, that flow, those waves met with that anchored, solid, stoic, masculine groundedness, unwavering groundedness. Because when a woman feels safe being all of herself with a man, she will become your everything, right? The safety that a man provide for a woman and that consistency and that steadfastness will allow her to blossom and bloom even more. And that, speaking from experience, is a gift that a healthy feminine woman will pay you back on in bigger and bigger and bigger ways, right? And that's the way that you step into the kind of love that I think we all deep down really want, but few of us are courageous enough to really go after, and few of us will truly find, I think, because that kind of love, the deep, passionate, intimate, connected, sustainable love, it's rare, right? But like I said before, I think striving for great love over good is well worth it. So if this episode hit something for you, if it struck a chord, if it resonated for you, if it felt good to listen to, if you identified with it, I really would love for you to share it. You can send it to your partner, a friend, somebody you know that needs to hear this. And I also would love to connect with you on Instagram at Lauren Salon. I'd love to hear your take on this. I'd love to hear what you thought. And until next time, keep on amplifying your power, owning your truth, your voice, and just like becoming the most activated, aligned, and magnetic version of you. And we'll see you on the next episode.